Stardom. My goal was not Hollywood. My goal was a good actress.
Esther Rolle, the woman who once moved all of America to tears in her role as Florida Evans, the resilient mother in Good Times, passed away in November 1998 in California, bringing to a close a life devoted to the screen and the Black community. Her funeral in Florida was simple, yet solemn. Fans hoped for a sacred reunion. The cast of Good Times, the faces who alongside Rolle had made television history, would gather around her casket, like a real family beyond the screen. But when the church doors closed, what stunned the public soon became clear. Not all of the Good Times stars showed up. The empty spaces where familiar co-stars should have been sent shockwaves through the memory of the Evans family. Fans were shaken. That silence wasn't merely a coincidence. It echoed long-standing tensions, quiet cracks behind the scenes that had been hidden for years. Because behind the laughter of dynamite and the warm family moments on screen were creative conflicts, script disputes, and personal relationships that were never mended. Esther Rolle's funeral, therefore, wasn't just a farewell to a star. It exposed a cold truth. Good Times was never truly a family, at least not in real life. So what caused the cast to refuse a reunion on the day they were meant to say goodbye to the woman who had been their soul on screen? The woman who brought the image of the Black mother to American television. At first glance, Esther Rolle might seem no different from many African-American women of her generation. Born into a large family, the daughter of poor immigrant parents, her childhood was shaped by hard labor and deep religious faith. But one only needs to follow her journey to realize this was no ordinary life story. Esther Rolle became a testament to the determination of an entire generation of Black artists, those who boldly stepped into Hollywood during a time of immense barriers to demand the right to exist, to be respected, and to be portrayed truthfully on screen. Born on November 8, 1920, in Pompano Beach, Florida, Esther was the 10th of 18 children. Her parents, immigrants from the Bahamas, made a living through farm work and manual labor, instilling in their children strict discipline and a strong work ethic. Esther's childhood was defined by the image of open fields church services and modest but warm family meals. This foundation built in her a resilient character, a sense of self-respect, and a refusal to take the easy way out qualities that would later define every role she played. From a young age, Esther showed a love for the arts. She was passionate about dancing, singing, and especially theater. After graduating from Booker T. Washington High School, she left Florida for New York, the land of Broadway and artistic dreams. The early years in this unfamiliar city were far from easy. She worked as a waitress and did odd jobs to survive while persistently taking theater classes. Yet it was this tough period that forged in her a sense of perseverance and an unshakable spirit traits that would carry her throughout her career. A turning point came when she joined the Negro Ensemble Company, one of the rare theater groups at the time offering real opportunities for Black performers. There, Esther Rolle refused the exaggerated comedic roles often assigned to Black actors. Instead, she gravitated toward strong, steadfast female characters with complex inner lives. She didn't want the audience to just laugh. She wanted them to think, to empathize. This strict selectiveness initially limited her opportunities, but over time it established her unique style. Whenever Esther Rolle appeared on stage, audiences expected something profound, honest, and deeply human. The 1960s, 1970s were turbulent times in America. The civil rights movement, the fight for equality, and a transformation in media. Television began to crack open its doors to Black actors, but most roles still fell into simplistic stereotypes. It was during this time that Norman Lear, a renowned producer of socially conscious sitcoms, took notice of Esther Rolle. He cast her in Maude 1972 as Florida Evans, a calm and candid Black housekeeper. Though a supporting role, her performance quickly won over audiences. They saw in Florida a rare intelligence, sharp humor, and dignity that was uncommon on television at the time. The affection grew so strong that viewers demanded a spin-off series focused on Florida and her family. This led to Good Times, the show that turned Esther Rolle from a little-known theater actress into a familiar face in millions of American households. However, Rolle's career was never solely defined by Good Times. For her, every role was a chance to assert a principle: the image of the Black community must never be distorted. This commitment led her to socially meaningful projects. In 1979, she won an Emmy for her role in Summer of My German Soldier, becoming one of the few Black women honored in that category. In film, she appeared in the Oscar-winning Driving Miss, Daisy and Rosewood 1997, a film that recounted the Black Massacre in Florida. Even in supporting roles, Esther Rolle consistently chose to appear in projects that held meaning works that truthfully portrayed the pain and pride of her community. Beyond the stage lights, Rolle was a woman of the community. She devoted much of her time to charity education and arts programs for Black youth. A devout member of the African Methodist Episcopal Church, she was deeply connected to spiritual life and believed that art and faith must go hand in hand. She once said that acting to her wasn't just entertainment, it was a form of social responsibility, a tool to help audiences understand that Black people also have stories, dreams, and values equal to anyone else's. What set Esther Rolle apart was her simplicity in personal life. Despite her fame, she never indulged in luxury. She returned to Florida, often took part in local life, and maintained close ties with her large extended family. She had no scandalous personal life, no tabloid headlines, and no chase for superficial fame. To the public, she was both a star and a beloved neighbor, a rare image in Hollywood. More than 2 decades after her passing, Esther Rolle's legacy remains intact. The image of the mother Florida Evans she portrayed has become a part of American cultural memory. But beyond a single character, Esther Rolle's life stands as the journey of a Black woman who dared to assert her voice in an era filled with prejudice. From a little immigrant girl from the Bahamas, to an Emmy-winning star from tiny stages in New York, to national screens, Rolle never lost sight of her mission. Art must be truthful, humane, and capable of inspiring social change. For those who grew up with Good Times, Esther Rolle was more than an actress. She was an icon. And for today's young artists, she is proof that staying true to one's values may be hard, but in the end, it leaves a deeper mark than any fleeting spotlight ever could. Good Times made Esther Rolle the soul of an era. If Maude was the beginning, then Good Times was the moment that cemented Esther Rolle as one of the irreplaceable figures in American television history. When the show premiered in 1974 on CBS, audiences had never seen a sitcom that so directly portrayed the life of a poor Black family living in a housing project in Chicago. At a time when American television was still saturated with images of happy white middle-class families, Good Times hit like a jolt, refreshing but controversial. The story revolved around the Evans family, James and Florida, a married couple, and their 3 children, Thelma, JJ, and Michael, struggling through poverty, but holding tightly to the values of family. It was this honesty that immediately struck a chord with millions of viewers, especially African Americans, who rarely saw their lives reflected on screen. Among the cast, the character of Florida Evans, played by Esther Rolle, became the emotional anchor of the entire show. Florida was not a glamorous Hollywood-style mother. She appeared in plain dresses, often wearing an apron, her face stern, but her eyes always filled with love. She never let poverty or discrimination compromise her family's dignity. When her husband was unemployed, or when her children made poor choices, Florida was the one who used love and firmness to keep the family from falling into despair. Esther Rolle portrayed this character with all the depth of her personal experience and conviction. Making Florida more than just a TV character, she became a national mother for millions of Black viewers. After just 1 season, Good Times landed in the top 10 most-watched television shows in America. JJ's catchphrase, "Die No Might," became a cultural phenomenon, popping up in everything from commercials and comedy stages to daily conversations. But behind the glamour, Esther Rolle held firm to her beliefs. The show couldn't just be a string of laughs. She repeatedly criticized the way the script exaggerated JJ's character, turning the Evans family into a vehicle for cheap laughs that ignored their harsh realities. Rolle boldly stated that she would not let Good Times become a cheap imitation, distorting the image of African Americans in front of the public. That stance sometimes strained her relationship with the production team. At its peak, Esther Rolle left the show after the 4th season, only returning for the final season when producers agreed to her conditions, improve the script quality, and bring the storyline back to its original social depth. Her firm stance not only reinforced her identity as a principled artist, but also highlighted her vital role in Good Times' survival. Without Florida Evans, the Evans family was just a hollow shell. Esther Rolle's contribution went far beyond ratings. She opened a new door for television viewers, saw a black mother who was strong, compassionate, intelligent, and dignified, a rare image in an era when American TV was still riddled with stereotypes. Florida Evans became an icon, leaving a lasting mark not only in audience memory, but in the broader cultural history of America. It was this powerful portrayal that elevated Good Times beyond mere entertainment. It became proof of television's potential to reflect reality and give voice to communities long overlooked. Esther Rolle's relationship with the Good Times cast. Behind the hearty laughs and warm family moments on screen, the relationship between Esther Rolle and her Good Times co-stars was far more complex than viewers might imagine. Like any creative ensemble, the show was both a bonding ground and a source of tension, especially as the looming shadow of success began to affect everyone involved. With John Amos, who played James Evans, Florida's husband, Esther Rolle, was both an ally and a source of support. In fact, it was Esther who persuaded the producers to include a father figure in the script, believing that a black family without a father would distort the image of the community. That decision gave John Amos the role of a lifetime and solidified the Evans couple as a strong, unified front. On screen, they were a model working-class couple. Off-screen, they shared the same philosophy. Good Times had to reflect reality and not devolve into cheap comedy. However, their blunt honesty often led to clashes with the production team. Amos, known for his fiery temper, frequently confronted the writers and was ultimately written off the show after season 3. His departure left a noticeable void, but also stood as evidence of the silent battle that he and Esther were both fighting. Meanwhile, Jimmy Walker, who played the eldest son, JJ, became the center of creative conflict. His comedic role and the catchphrase "Dynamite" echoed across America, making him the show's entertainment heart. Audiences loved him and ratings soared, but Esther Rolle and John Amos grew concerned. They felt that JJ was being reduced to a caricature, overshadowing the show's family values and steering it toward slapstick. Rolle even stated openly that she didn't want black children thinking all it took to succeed was to stand on a street corner and crack a joke. The tension escalated to the point where Jimmy Walker later admitted in interviews that for years during filming, he barely spoke to Esther Rolle and John Amos outside of work. Not out of hatred, but because their differing perspectives had built an invisible wall between them. By contrast, Bernadette Stannis Thelma and Ralph Carter, Michael, the younger actors who played the Evans children, had a more harmonious relationship with Esther Rolle. To Stannis, Rolle was like a second mother, advising her on how to maintain a respectable public image and avoid scandal. Ralph Carter, who came from the Broadway stage, was encouraged by Esther to stay committed to serious artistic work. While generational differences were inevitable, mutual respect prevailed between them, at least during their time working together. Beyond the core cast, Jeanette Dubois, who played neighbor Willona Woods, also shared meaningful memories with Esther Rolle. Both strong-willed women had shared the stage in theater before joining the sitcom. Though not particularly close, their relationship was marked by mutual respect. Janet Jackson, the child star who joined later as Penny, often recounted how she learned discipline and professionalism from Ms. Rolle, who reminded young actors that each scene was not just a performance, but a message to the audience. One could say that the Good Times cast dynamic was a blend of camaraderie and irreconcilable cracks. Esther Rolle was both revered as a pillar and distanced for her principles. She didn't take the easy route to please everyone, and she maintained her distance from those who opposed her artistic ideals. That contrast created an atmosphere that was simultaneously united and divided behind the scenes. A portrait full of contradictions, yet one that honestly reflects the journey of an entire generation of black television artists in America. The death and funeral of Esther Rolle. On November 17, 1998, news of Esther Rolle's death spread throughout Hollywood and the African-American community. At 78 years old, she passed away in Culver City, California, from complications related to diabetes, a condition she had battled for many years. For many, her passing wasn't just the loss of an actress, but the loss of a cultural icon, a spiritual mother who had accompanied them for 2 decades through the television screen. American media at the time unanimously honored Rolle's contributions. The Los Angeles Times described her as a woman who gave audiences the image of the black mother with strength, compassion, and dignity, while televised tributes replayed the iconic moment when Florida Evans broke down upon hearing of her husband's death, a scene considered one of the most emotional performances in sitcom history. Viewers felt that losing Esther Rolle was like losing a member of their own family. Her funeral was held at Bethel African Methodist Episcopal Church in Pompano Beach, Florida, the hometown she had remained connected to since childhood. The ceremony was not flashy or performative, but simple and heartfelt, just like Esther Rolle herself. Attendees recalled the image of the church's hundreds of wooden pews filled with family friends, loyal fans, and former colleagues. The somber atmosphere was soaked in both tears and reverence. Her family chose to lay her to rest at Westview Community Cemetery, a historic burial ground for the Black community in Pompano Beach. It was where many generations had been buried, and Esther wanted to return to the embrace of her community. The decision was not only personal, but symbolic. She who had given voice to Black families on television would now lie among them in eternal silence. Fans anticipated a special moment during the funeral, a reunion of the Good Times cast. In the public's imagination, they would sit together, share memories, and weep before the casket of the woman who had been the soul of the Evans family. But what followed was quite different. Some familiar faces appeared, but there were noticeable absences that stirred conversation. News quickly spread that not all the Good Times stars had attended, leaving the question, why didn't they all come together to bid farewell to their on-screen mother? Esther Rolle's funeral thus became more than a farewell ritual. It became a mirror reflecting long-standing tensions and quiet distances that had lingered behind the scenes for years. To the audience, that image was both heartbreaking and haunting. It seemed the Evans family had only ever truly existed on screen, while in real life fractures had driven them apart. And it was that absence, even of just a few, that turned the funeral into a lasting question in the cultural memory. Why the Good Times cast didn't all attend. Esther Rolle's funeral. If Esther Rolle's funeral was expected to be a moving reunion, what unfolded instead revealed difficult-to-explain absences. The seats once imagined to be filled by the full Evans family were not completely occupied. This void quickly became a subject of public speculation, raising the question, why didn't the colleagues who stood beside Esther Rolle for so many years all come together to say goodbye? As with most behind-the-scenes Hollywood stories, the answer was more complicated than viewers imagined. John Amos, who played James Evans, Florida's husband, was always seen as Esther's closest ally throughout Good Times. It was Rolle who had advocated for the inclusion of a father figure, giving Amos his defining role. Though Amos left the show after creative disagreements, his relationship with Rolle was never truly broken. There's no evidence he missed the funeral. On the contrary, several sources confirmed that Amos continued to hold deep respect for Rolle, and his presence at her service would have been entirely fitting. Bernadette Stannis Thelma and Ralph Carter, Michael the Younger, cast members had a peaceful and respectful relationship with Esther. For Stannis' Rolle was like a second mother, constantly advising her on how to maintain a clean image and focus on her career. Carter, who came from a Broadway background, was encouraged by Rolle to pursue serious artistry. There is no record suggesting they intentionally stayed away. It is likely they were present at the funeral, or at the very least sent their farewells. Jeanette Dubois Willona and Johnny Brown Bookman, two important supporting characters, also maintained friendly professional relationships with Rolle. Jeanette, with a similar theater background, shared many things in common with Esther. There is no official confirmation about their attendance at the funeral, but it's widely acknowledged that they held genuine respect for her. Janet Jackson Penney, a teenage newcomer to the show, went on to become a global superstar. Her demanding schedule may have been the reason she didn't attend in person. However, reports at the time confirmed that Janet sent condolences to Rolle's family, showing clear respect for the woman who had once mentored her on set. Then all eyes turned to Jimmy Walker, who played JJ. For audiences, Walker was the comedic heart of Good Times, but for Esther Rolle and John Amos, he was a source of major creative conflict. Rolle had openly criticized the way JJ's character was turned into a clown, and Walker later admitted that during filming he rarely spoke to Rolle or Amos outside of scenes. That emotional distance made his absence from the funeral a lightning rod for controversy. Some reports even claimed he was the only main cast member who did not attend. For the public, it was a disappointment. But for Walker, perhaps it was the inevitable outcome of unresolved tensions. Looking back, it's clear that not all of the Good Times cast intentionally boycotted the funeral, as some rumors suggested. Still, the absence of just a few key faces, especially Walker, was enough to cast a shadow over the farewell and make audiences feel that the Evans family they loved on screen never truly existed in full off-camera. The diverging paths of the Good Times cast. After Good Times ended in 1979, each member of the Evans family embarked on their own journey filled with varying highs and lows. The success of the show had once catapulted them into the spotlight, but also left behind a towering legacy that was difficult to surpass. The post-Good Times story became both a continuation of fame and a struggle to find new footing in a ruthless industry. John Amos, the on-screen father. James Evans went on to enjoy an impressive acting career. He starred in Roots 1977, a landmark television miniseries portraying the history of slavery, earning multiple Emmy nominations and making Amos a nationally recognized face. He later appeared in major projects like Coming to America, 1988, Die Hard 2, 1990, and the series The West Wing. Amos became known as a versatile actor who could shift seamlessly between drama and comedy, maintaining a steady career well into the 2000s and 2010s. Outside of acting, he was active in community work, wrote books, and regularly took part in public events. Jimmy Walker, the iconic JJJ, with his catchphrase "Dynamite," perhaps retained the most enduring fame from Good Times. After the show ended, Walker focused on stand-up comedy, touring across the U.S. He appeared in other sitcoms such as At Ease and Bustin' Loose, though they didn't replicate his earlier success. In 2012, he published a memoir, Din-O-Mite, Good Times, Bad Times, Our Times, recounting the ups and downs with the cast and the often contentious behind-the-scenes stories. Though once viewed as distant from his co-stars, Walker remained a steady solo performer, living off his humor and personal brand. Bernadette Stanis, who played Thelma, the graceful daughter of the Evans family, continued in the arts, albeit more quietly. She appeared in shows like The Cosby Show, The Wayans Brothers, and a few other TV series. Beyond acting, Stanis became an author with books like Situations 101 and For Men Only, where she offered insights on love, marriage, and life. Later, she became a beauty ambassador and regularly participated in expos and cultural events, maintaining a warm rapport with her now middle-aged fan base. Ralph Carter, the idealistic and intelligent Michael Evans, had already been a stage talent before Good Times. After the show, he returned to Broadway, continued singing, and took part in musical theater productions. While no longer a household TV name, Carter remained committed to the arts, appearing in smaller performances and community projects. He became a symbol of an artist who chose to live fully through passion rather than chase the spotlight. Jeanette Dubois, who played the Evans neighbor Willona Woods, only cemented her legacy further after Good Times. She co-wrote and sang Movin' On, up the unforgettable theme song of The Jeffersons. Dubois appeared in numerous series, including A Different World ER and The Wayans Brothers, and also voiced characters in The PJs. She won 2 Emmy Awards for her voice work, showcasing her wide-ranging talent. Jeanette passed away in 2020, leaving behind a rich legacy in both music and television. Johnny Brown, who played Building Superintendent Bookman, continued working as a comedic actor and TV guest. He appeared in The Parkers, Everybody Hates Chris, and various comedy shows. Brown was remembered for his charm and distinct comedic presence until his passing in 2022. Janet Jackson, the young star who played Penny in the later seasons, took a dramatically different path. After Good Times, she became one of the biggest pop stars in the world, selling over 100 million records, winning multiple Grammy Awards, and emerging as a global cultural icon. For Janet, Good Times was merely a starting point, but it was also where she learned the discipline of acting from Esther Rolle, a lesson she would cite often when reflecting on her childhood and early career. In retrospect, the Good Times cast followed different paths. Some continued to shine brightly, others stepped out of the limelight, and some have passed away. But all of them carried a shared imprint from a series that reshaped how audiences viewed Black families on American television. The legacy of Good Times may have been both a blessing and a burden, but the cultural mark it left, along with the memory of Esther Rolle, remains deeply tied to each of their names. Messages from Esther Rolle's funeral. Looking back at Esther Rolle's funeral and the discussions surrounding the presence or absence of the Good Times, Cast the Public can draw profound lessons, not just about the entertainment industry, but also about friendship career and how society remembers cultural icons. First, it's a lesson about truth and rumor. Reports that the entire cast did not attend the funeral were in fact exaggerated. Only a few members were absent, most notably Jimmy Walker, while others paid their respects in their own ways. Truth can often be distorted by media perspectives or public expectations. This reminds us to stay discerning when faced with unverified stories. Second, it's a lesson about professional relationships. On screen, the Evans family symbolized love and unity. Off-screen, they were like any group of colleagues dealing with disagreements, tensions, and personal distance. The conflicts between Esther Rolle, John Amos, and Jimmy Walker reflect the reality that success comes with pressure, and artists must sometimes fight to protect their creative ideals. This does not diminish the value of good times. On the contrary, it highlights the sacrifices made to keep the show aligned with its original purpose. Third, from Esther Rolle herself, we learn about the social responsibility of an artist. She refused to compromise when the scripts distorted the image of the Black community. She was willing to leave the show when it no longer upheld honesty. That unwavering spirit made her a role model. Art is not just for entertainment, it should inspire, educate, and elevate awareness. Fourth, the funeral served as a reminder about cultural memory. Even though the cast did not fully reunite, what matters most is the legacy they left behind. The image of Florida Evans and the Evans family lives on in the hearts of viewers despite real-life conflicts. This proves the enduring power of art. It can transcend individual differences and preserve values that future generations still find meaningful. Finally, it's a lesson in gratitude. Esther Rolle is remembered not only for her talent, but for her character. Her modest funeral, though missing a few familiar faces, was filled with reverence from the community. It reminds us that while careers may fade and conflicts may stir controversy, the sincere values one gives to their community are what endure the longest. If you find this story captivating and want to keep uncovering behind-the-scenes secrets of iconic films and stars, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Your support means the world to us, and it fuels our mission to bring you more untold stories.
All data, analysis, and commentary in this video are presented based on information available at the time of production. The content is subject to change over time and should not be considered a definitive forecast. There is still so much more to explore: stories of resilience, legacy, and truth. Feel free to dive into some of our top recommended videos now appearing on the screen.